Hey, friends. I am incredibly excited to connect with you for the podcast this week. Welcome to the Inner Authority era. Yes, you heard that right. If you are one of the amazing humans that has supported me and has listened to the first couple episodes, you've known this as the business of becoming. You may have even heard at some point that my business was transformational consulting, especially if you're following me on social media. Well, I just made a ton of changes. And I mentioned a little bit about this in the podcast 2 weeks ago before my guest episode with Elizabeth. I've really been working through a lot. I just got out of the Spiritual Investor Mastermind last week. There's so much that's happened since the last full moon. There's just a lot of amazing things going on for me. And honestly, that's going to lead into what we're talking about today, which is redirection, not refusal. The universe has definitely been leading me in such an amazing direction that I didn't expect. It's been a little bit more difficult than I expected as well. It hasn't been quite the fun that I thought I was going to have the past 3 months, but I'm really starting to appreciate the journey since I left my finance career in April. And so I had started the business as transformational consulting and this podcast as the business of becoming, really because I thought that I needed to be a little bit more businessy. I thought I needed to be a little bit more professional. I thought I needed to make things make a little bit more sense. When in reality, I knew that if I were going to define myself the way that I want to, it would be something like spiritual teacher. Not only do I want to make a massive change in the world, but I don't want to make a massive change in the world by being really businessy. That doesn't mean I just want to go sit on the mountaintop and meditate and I want to be a monk or something like that. Not that there's something wrong with it, but I think being in the world makes a big difference. And I think even just with our presence, we can be really impactful to others. So I by no means have a desire to just like go off and be silent or just get away from the world. I don't feel that at all. But I also don't feel like playing all of the existing games. I don't necessarily feel like following the existing algorithms or following the paths or, just everything that's currently laid out. What I'm doing is clearly supposed to be very different. And so I've changed a ton over the past 3 months, far more than I ever could have imagined. And I've also changed more than I could have imagined in the past few weeks. And so that's why the entire rebrand, not because it matters all that much since only a few people knew what the old was, but because you deserve so much better from me. You deserve the most authentic version of me. And the most authentic version of me is very weird and very spiritual and all of these things. And so that's exactly what this podcast is going to be now. That's exactly what my business is going to be. It's going to be a lot weirder. It's not going to fit in because there's no reason why I should be doing that. And I want to say this before I go any further because I wanted to make this a part of the new podcast. Please take what resonates and feel free to leave whatever doesn't. You can also sit with whatever doesn't resonate with you immediately, but these messages are going to be, I don't know that I want to say more narrow, but they're going to be very specific. They're going to be a lot more spiritual. They're going to be a lot weirder. They're going to be a lot deeper. In some ways, they're going to be a lot harder to hear at times. And so this podcast isn't meant to resonate with everyone. And it may not even necessarily resonate with you every single time that you listen to it either, because I'm never creating this as a performance. Yes, maybe a little bit the name or the logo was, but the messages that I deliver are quite literally me channeling something through me. These are transmissions. I am extremely intuitive. This is not a script. I have not decided what I was going to say before I hit record. Yes, I have an idea of the topic because I had a download. I had something that came to me this week, but this is not about knowing exactly what I was going to say or knowing exactly what this should be. This is quite literally about just giving you the experience that you deserve, about giving you a beautiful message that was clearly meant for you today, because that's exactly how it came through me. And so take what resonates, leave what doesn't, maybe even sit with what doesn't a little bit, but don't try to force it. And I also want to remind you that you have incredible power. You are going to hear some of the things I am going to say, especially as I'm stepping more into my power. And some of you will listen to me and think, I wish I could be like her, or I wish I could speak like her, or I wish I could channel these messages like her. And I want you to know that you absolutely can. And you also don't need to do it like me. You need to do it like you. So please don't listen to this looking for something that's wrong with you either. That's something that I've really been working on. This isn't a podcast to tell you what's wrong with you. This isn't a podcast to tell you what you need to work on. This is so much more than the whole let's go to therapy and let's work on ourselves all the time. While that is really, really meaningful, I feel like some of us have moved beyond that a little bit. Sure, we may dip into periods where we need therapy or we need some of the, let's call it more mind based practices, but so many of us are craving deeply spiritual practices. We're craving heart centered things. And in general, things like therapy and self help and all of the things we normally talk about are not that. They quite often take away our power, and they quite often cause us to bring up the past in a way that we don't need to. There is infinite potential in every single moment. You are perfectly capable of being a new version of you right now if you decide to claim that. Like I said, I have changed very significantly in the past few weeks. Anyone that knows me, or even anyone that's kind of just listened to this podcast, can hear it in my voice and can feel it in my energy. I am a very, very different version of me. And so that is what this is about. That my work is about helping you come back home to yourself, helping you remember who you truly are, helping you remember just how much power you have, helping you remember how amazing you are, and helping you to remember that your inner knowing and what is going on in your body is so much more profound than what is ever going to happen in your mind. That does not mean that your mind is still not beautiful in its own way. There is a lot of spiritual people that, in my opinion, wrongfully talk about getting rid of the ego or getting rid of the mind or something like that. Nothing is ever meant to be ditched completely, it is meant to be dissolved. For example, I have learned to stop hating him. I have learned to stop hating that past version of myself. I don't even know if I can say anymore he didn't really know who he was. That's a conversation for a different time, because as I've been reflecting on my trans experience and how I actually feel about what I've gone through and who I've become, I'm not sure I feel so wrong about who he was anymore. And maybe that's just the maturity of the way that I see it. Maybe that's the him dissolving into me. He doesn't need to take the wheel. He doesn't need to try to show up or protect me or doubt because of who he was and the life that he had. I need to be in this moment. I need to understand just how different my life is now, especially with things like money and with my business. But that doesn't mean that I need to hate him. That doesn't mean that I need to have any problems with him. And so this is not an invitation to fix yourself. This is not an invitation to beat yourself up. This is not an invitation to hate yourself in any way. This podcast is an invitation to love yourself more deeply, to go deeper, to feel your shadows, to feel your feelings, to feel your body, to feel your inner knowing, because that's what the world needs more of. So, as I said, This episode is truly about redirection, not refusal. So, part of the reason why I'm showing up as powerfully as I am right now. Ooh, actually, sorry, before I jump to that, I have to tell you about this. So, I recorded this podcast about 4 or 5 hours ago. And I should have listened to the audio. I didn't because I genuinely thought it was going to be good enough. And especially the audio of the podcast itself. Like, if you're not watching any of my clips on Instagram, if you're not listening, watching this on YouTube, I thought it was going to be fine. I didn't think I was going to be super happy with the audio on YouTube, but I actually clipped my microphone to my necklace earlier because honestly, I don't love holding it, and there's not super great ways to clip it to my shirt. I'm still honestly kind of figuring out what I want to do with this because I love using my hands, and sometimes I feel a little bit constricted with the microphone. So I clipped it to my necklace, the same one that I'm wearing right now. And when I got home from the gym about an hour ago, and I started listening to some of the clips because I was planning on posting one of them on Instagram tonight, I realized I that the audio was just absolute shit. Like, it was not worth anything. I was just cringing, so much like tension, and just I felt so horrible in my body. And I knew that you didn't deserve that. I could not give that to you. And I didn't deserve that either because I also added some additional tools and I figured out how to make the video better, so I wasn't going to suddenly allow the audio to be that bad. You would not have even wanted to listen to this. Maybe you could have gotten through the audio, but if you would have seen some of the clips I would have posted on Instagram, it just would have been horrible. So I'm having to completely scrap the podcast from earlier. And I don't think there's ever coincidences. I think the timing of everything is very purposeful. And maybe that's just the meaning that I choose to give it, but I truly believe that. And so I just say that to say I am honestly more excited to be here with you tonight because I think that what I'm giving you is infinitely more powerful than what I gave you earlier. And there's nothing wrong with what it was earlier, but clearly that wasn't the message that you were supposed to get. That wasn't the podcast that you were supposed to hear or watch. And so I'm excited for you to have something so much more special. And it's not that I thought about it for hours afterwards. I didn't. I just again came and I took a few deep breaths and I hit record because, as I said, this is channeled. This is a transmission. I don't try when I do this podcast. Speaking for me is very, very effortless. It is absolutely one of my gifts. And so, yeah, I'm just so excited to share all of this with you. Now, coming back to redirection, not refusal. This was something that's been coming up for me in the past few weeks. I've heard similar things before, basically, the idea that the universe never really denies you anything. It's just helping you pivot, or it's helping you go in a different direction, or it's removing someone or something that was never supposed to be there, or if you didn't get that opportunity, it's because a better one's on the way. But I didn't truly believe that for quite some time, which is weird because the meaning I make of everything, the way that I think there are no coincidences, so the way that I think of divine timing, so if I think all of that, if I feel all of that, how can I possibly believe that everything's not meant to be? That, for example, the fact that my finance career didn't go the way that I would have liked for it to go wasn't truly meaningful. So it really hit me yesterday. I was already kind of reflecting on this a lot more. I was already thinking about it a lot more. And then yesterday, I was texting a potential new client. So I have this amazing co-working space, like co-working fitness, like event space that I'm a part of. It's called Gravity House here in Denver. They actually have quite a few hotels. This is like their one, I guess, like clubhouse, if you will. And so I just love it so much. And I've tried to go to many of the events as I can, especially the ones that are complimentary, as I'm spending a lot of money on the business and investing a lot in myself in other ways right now. And so I was at a happy hour 2 weeks ago. It was actually a tasting, and I met someone that I thought was potentially going to be a client. We were talking about what I did, and I still hadn't changed the name of the business at that point, but I knew that it was changing. I knew that it was now related to inner knowing. I realized just how much I had learned in trusting my own inner knowing, especially through my trans experience, that that had to be what I'm teaching, at least in this moment. I'm sure it's going to evolve over time, but it seems so incredibly obvious now that that is exactly what I am supposed to be teaching and what am I and the work that I'm supposed to be doing for you. And so I showed him the electronic business card. Ultimately, he saw the name Transformational Consulting, and I guess he latched on to that. And I did tell him it's kind of consulting, but not really. I help entrepreneurs connect to their inner knowing and to cut through all the noise and to know that you can absolutely make decisions off of what you're feeling in your body. And when I say those words, I don't even remotely comprehend how anyone could possibly perceive me as anything but a little bit different and a little bit woo woo, if not very much so. But I guess maybe he heard the consulting part and then kind of shut the rest off a little bit, or he thought something about the website or the LinkedIn looked professional, and he just kind of decided he didn't really care about the details, which I find that totally weird. Obviously, I don't know what he was thinking, but I feel like that's probably what had to have happened. So, anyway, clearly a misunderstanding. So I go to talk to him last week. I go to try to set a meeting, maybe grab coffee or something like that, talk about coaching, or at that time consulting. But coaching, consulting, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I kind of hate these labels sometimes. Again, I'm more so saying I'm spiritual teacher, spiritual guide now, but again, kind of irrelevant to an extent. So he says that he's really busy last week. He's got some friends coming in town. So I'm like, okay, no big deal. Like, happy to connect next week. And when I sent him like the text back telling him that, I also mentioned, hope you enjoy the time with your friends coming in town. And I sent like a heart faced emoji. And so I texted him yesterday and asked him if he wanted to grab coffee this week, thinking that everything was fine. And he texts me back and says, because of the heart faced emoji, he doesn't feel like that's the level of professionalism that he's looking for. And he just doesn't feel the reason to meet anymore. And honestly, I was pissed. I was not happy whatsoever. And this was for a few different reasons, but one of them just being, I think that kind of shit is so ridiculous. And I don't even necessarily think he was trying to be pretentious or anything. Although I kind of see it that way, if I'm being honest. And I know I shouldn't make those judgments, but I just think we're still so ridiculous about being so like businessy and professional. And I am just so beyond over that. I've been so over that for quite some time now. I mean, honestly, being in my finance career as long as I did almost killed me as far as this is concerned. I got so tired of not being able to just get to know clients as me the way that I'm talking to you right now, that involves my weirdness and my spirituality and my authenticity and like the way I'm super vulnerable about my life and like things that happen, and also even the way that I curse a little bit, because who cares? Like, it's so ridiculous. That's not inherently unprofessional. We have such problems with like labels and the way we define things because we think it makes us safer and more comfortable, but really all it does is restrict us. Sure, there's reasons for structures and processes and all of these things, like, they do matter, but we put far too much weight on like the masculine energy and the masculine side of things. Like, let's just be more creative and sometimes let's just like float and let's ditch all the labels and everything. So I was just kind of pissed. I was like, I so badly wanted to share something beautiful with him, but I just knew he wasn't going to receive it. And I knew that it just wasn't worth my energy. So I didn't even respond to him. But I texted my friend Nick, who you've probably heard me talk about before, because I needed someone in that moment that understood. Not someone who's an echo chamber, even though yes, that specific conversation was going to be an echo chamber, but I mean somebody who understands on a deeper level how sad that is. That you think a heart emoji is fucking unprofessional. And so we were texting about it. And of course, he agreed. He was just like, I'm sorry. Like, that really sucks. That's just so ridiculous. And as I'm texting him about this, I just get this weird download. And I just feel like the universe is saying to me, I'm saying to myself, whatever you want to call it, because really we are source. We're always like teaching ourselves things, but for whatever reason, I like to refer to it as the universe, and that doesn't mean I think there's some like overseer out there. I just feel like sometimes we talk about, especially like the world we live in, being like a mirror. So that's kind of how I think of it. Like the universe is always reflecting things back, and I just felt like the universe was saying, "Hey, Sabrina, that wouldn't happen if you would just be weird and you would just be spiritual. So, what else can you expect when you tell people things like you're doing consulting? Yeah, you're not going to find the right people." And I was so mad about that. Not mad necessarily in like I didn't want to hear it or I was completely resisting it, but just mad in like a little bit of a childlike way, in the way that maybe once you're a little bit older, maybe let's say you're like 25, 30, like 40, like you're a little bit older and like your parents or one of your friends tells you something, and like you have the maturity at that point to actually hear it, but you just don't like it. And that's how I felt. I was thinking to myself, this is so aggravating, but fine, okay? Because I'm already, some of the stuff I'm doing for this business, I'm developing human design charts and I'm being much more honest about the fact that I'm using things like human design and I'm very intuitive. And my coaching, my teaching is literally a transmission, it is channeling. I am not using effort when words come out of my mouth. If you are in a session with me, or eventually a group session or a retreat or something like that, I am not thinking about what I am supposed to say. This is just happening. I am just a vessel for the message. It is that simple. And so saying things like that. And yesterday, I just thought to myself, okay, fine, you win. Like, I will now be more spiritual. I will be more weird. And I was already finishing the logo yesterday, in the middle of working on some of the human design reports and some of the other things that I'm going to put out into the world within the next week or so. And I just thought to myself, yeah, the podcast has to change as well. And also my Substack newsletter, because the Substack newsletter was the same name as the podcast. And it was just so obvious. And it's not so much that I think it can't ever happen, that someone won't ever mistake things. But when I start doing like tarot readings on TikTok or something like that, like these are things that I want to do. When that happens, it's going to be really hard to peg me as anyone other than the person that I really am. Of course, there will always be people judging. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about someone who might want to work with me, just like misunderstanding my energy and misunderstanding what I'm about. And you also have to be an energetic match for the things that you want. The universe will mirror back to you and will give you the things that you are putting out there. So, what is it giving me? Barely any clients, not really enjoying what I was doing, not really being able to explain what I was doing to anyone. like some weird interactions like this, that was happening for a reason. The universe was showing it to me. So the universe the past couple months wasn't saying, oh, you don't deserve wealth, you don't deserve abundance, that's why the business isn't really working so far. It's quite literally saying, this is the energy that you're putting out. This is the level of authenticity that you're putting out into the world. So what do you expect, Sabrina? Like, you need to be weirder if you want to get more out of this. So that hit really hard. And then I've started to realize recently exactly what happened in my finance career. Because especially the last 2 years of it, 2.5 years of it, I was around a bunch of really wealthy clients. And they showed up in the world a certain way, or at least tended to. There was definitely some of them that were a little bit more grounded, a little bit more just different. But in general, they showed up in the world in a certain way. They had really nice things. A lot of them followed traditional success quite a bit. And they often were very amazing people. Like, I had some really great relationships with some of them, but they still were living a life that I thought I wanted. And again, it's not that I want to just go sit on the mountaintop. I want to be wealthy, but I don't necessarily want a really big house or a really big car. I want one of the nice couches I could possibly buy, but I don't want enough rooms to have 3 different couches or 10 different TVs or something like that. I'm not even sure I want a house. I'm actually incredibly happy with my apartment. I kind of like an apartment or a condo in the city and maybe a place in the mountains, stuff like that. And I'm not being modest about it because I think I have to. I mainly want money for experiences, and I also want money to impact the world. I want to help billions of people. I know I'm going to help billions of people, and it takes wealth and abundance and resources to have that kind of impact. But I wasn't allowed to be successful in my finance career because I would have stayed. I would not be talking to you right now. I would not be co creating this beautiful podcast and this experience right now because I can feel your energy. I can feel that you are here with me. That's why I'm calling it a co creation. It's not just me here talking. You are absolutely here with me, regardless of when you're listening to this. And so, I wasn't being refused success. I was just being refused traditional success. I was being refused a particular type of work. I was being refused a particular version of myself. And it was really painful for 10 years. I'm not going to pretend that it wasn't. It was. It wasn't fun not being successful. I mean, finally, the past 2 years were a little bit better, but they still, in many ways and for many reasons, due to my divorce and other things where I had to pay for unexpected expenses and I had to split certain funds, that wasn't fun. But I wasn't a match for that life. The universe couldn't let me wait any longer to be here with you because you need these messages and you need my energy. And I'm not saying that from a place of ego. I'm not saying that from a place of, I'm so amazing. I'm saying that from a place of you waking up as well. You feeling your own power, you feeling your own inner knowing, you making a difference in the world, even if it's just with the few people around you. Because when you show up with a very different version of yourself, you become undeniable. Those people may have to leave your life because they can't handle that energy anymore, but you will still affect people around you. Even if you don't have your own business, you could still affect the people in your office at work or at the restaurant you work at or something like that. It is all so meaningful, so truly. Things are always being mirrored back to us. And it's not always hey, this is what you're doing. Sometimes it's you're judging people for this thing, or you think there's something wrong with it, or whatever. There's different reasons and different ways things get mirrored back to us. There's not only one way, and it's not only, hey, something's wrong with you, and this is what you're doing, and that's why you don't deserve these things right now. It's not about deserving. We all deserve massive wealth and abundance, but we also have to rise to the level of ourselves that believes that we can have those things. Because if you don't believe you deserve the life that you want, the things that you're dreaming about, then you're not going to get it. Then you are going to see that refusal, or really that redirection mirrored back to you, because the universe is going to try to help you get rid of all the baggage that's stopping you from being where you want to be. So, I trust that this is exactly what you needed tonight. I know, I know for sure this was so much better than what I recorded earlier. I am so incredibly proud of the way I showed up for you tonight, the way we showed up together. And I can't wait for you to listen to this, hopefully tomorrow on the new moon. But even if you don't listen to it directly on the new moon, the energy's still there. It's a Leo new moon. So it's going to be really powerful. There's a lot of people that are about to become a lot more authentic. I am not the only one realizing I need to get weirder. You are also going through that as well, even if you don't realize it, because that background energy is there, whether we pay attention to it or not. So I am so grateful to be able to connect with you like this. And I can't wait to connect with you on deeper levels, with more impact, with more people. There is so many incredible things coming, and it's also changing very fast. My life over the next couple months is going to be vastly different than it has been up to this point. And so, again, welcome to the inner authority era.